So many thanks to Jeanne Etlin and to Philippe Usher for imagining and organizing this conference. This event is part of the center's program. So let me say a few words about the Center for French Language and Cultures. The center organizes each year three big events. The fall event is a conference. The last one was the topic of the last one. The last ones were French Global Theater, The Sense of Sound, French Natures, and so this year, the Rewiring Democracy. We also organize a series of invitation of French-speaking writers. We just listened to Maëlys de Kerangal, and in 2 weeks we will receive Olivier Cadiot. And there is also during the spring, the festival, the Francophone Festival, with many debates and also exhibitions, performance in music and theater. So this reflection, this 2 days reflection, is supported by also by the Florence Gould Foundation and also by the French Cultural Services. So this event is a way for us to also involve the academic reflection in the public sphere, in the political sphere. Of course, we all know that democracy today, it makes us, it's a big concern. There is a big concern about democracy in Europe and in America, which are, continents supposed to be or claim themselves as democratic. And but in a way, we could say that democracy has never been a sustainable or a stable system or society. It has always been in crisis. And that's one of the great thinkers of democracy, Jacques Rancière, in his book Hatred of Democracy, observes that philosophers have never liked democracy. Not him, but from Plato to contemporary ones, democracy doesn't seem a good model. Anyway, I guess that if you want to plug it back in, that's because you want to make us love it. So I'm very excited to listen to you, and I'm happy to pass it on to Philippe Usher, who is our chair, but also a real Democrat. So Philippe, it's your turn.
So, hi, good morning, everybody. So my name is Philip John Asher. I'm the chair of the Department of French Literature, Thought and Culture, and one of the two co-organizers of this event, Rewiring Democracy. So welcome, everybody. Welcome, speakers. Welcome, listeners. And hopefully those are not fixed categories, but speakers will listen and listeners will speak. And I'd like to, first of all, just say a few thank yous, building on the ones that Francois already made. First of all, thank you to Dean Carolyn Dinshaw, who will speak to you in just a moment, for being here, but more generally for supporting both everything French at NYU and for supporting the humanities even more generally. In the times that we're in, I don't think I need to say how important the humanities are, but whether they're important or not, they certainly wouldn't exist and they wouldn't evolve unless they had institutional support. So it's delightful to be in a place where that is the case. Without the support of the cultural services of the French Embassy, we would also not be here. So thank you especially to the Conseil Culturel Gaëtan Bruel and to his predecessor Bénédicte de Montlore, as well as to the whole embassy team. Our connection with the cultural services is incredibly important to us, and it's an honor and joy to work with the embassy on a sort of weekly basis. Thank you also to our other sponsors, the Florence Gould Foundation, the NYU Center for the Humanities, and closest to home, NYU's Department of French Literature, Thought and Culture, whose chair has been generous for this event. So I'd also like to, in the spirit of thanking those close to home, thank very much my colleagues here at NYU. And by colleagues, I mean both faculty members and graduate students for your support of this event in lots of ways, conceptual and practical. And so my short list of folks who've really helped out at NYU include Emily Apter, Laurence Marie, Frédéric Viguier, Downing Bray, John Moran, Athena Fakaitis, Hannah Friedthal, Indigo Rancourt, Ayet Salami, Josh Suter, Emile Anceau, Whitney Martin, and Kristen Christie. So thank you to everyone. It's a delight to be in a place where one feels supported and part of a big team. Two final thank yous. One, of course, to Jeanne Talin, my co-organizer, who is a thinker of zones and a really generous think-wither. It's really been a pleasure to put this conference together with you. Your intellectual commitment and your collegial energy are just astounding. So it's been a pleasure, and thank you for everything that you've done. And thank you to Guillaume Parodi, who is at the au fond de la salle, and the only person without a name tag, because he just doesn't need one at this point. So Guillaume, who is the assistant to the chair and the assistant to the director of the center, is the master of details, the person who's made everything possible today and tomorrow. And so I thank you very much, Guillaume. It's always a delight to work with you. Okay, so I am not going to attempt on the threshold of our 2 days to delimit or delineate the territory to be explored. But I want to pause just for a very brief moment on the title around which we gather, Rewiring Democracy. Or rather, I'm going to pause on the first half of the title, and Jeanne will pause on the second half of the title. And I'll point out that we didn't even plan it that way. It just turned out that we'd been, working very well together. And so when we compared remarks, it just happened that I was commenting on the first half and she was commenting on the second half. So I think that's a testament to the real team effort that we've had here. So in any case, rewiring democracy. The metaphor turns around the prefix on an opposition. On the one hand, wiring a house is an orderly and methodic process, a utopian event even, that occurs as a house is being built, first in the mind of the architect, then in the hands of the electrician. A plan is made. Ceiling roses will go here, here, and here. Junction boxes will go there, there, and there. The ring main will gracefully sweep around the house, feeding the outlets located according to some overarching idea of how the house will be lived in. There will be double pole isolating switches for the cooker. There is cosmic order. On the other hand, rewiring a house is messy. The plans have been lost. The house's lived space no longer adheres to the original idea. There are extension cords that offer a temporary solution. The living room is no longer organized around the presence of a television set. The former closet has become a bedroom and needs proper lighting. Outlets have been added shoddily in the hallway. Lights flicker. Circuit breakers trip regularly, and eventually there's a fire. It's time to rewire. Holes are made in walls. Carpets and floorboards are pulled up. There is dust and disorder. Rewiring, then, starts not with an architect's idea, not with a plan, not in the abstract, but with a system that sort of or sometimes works, but which flickers or burns and which needs updating. The idea of rewiring democracy thus imposed itself on us as a suitable way to capture the situation in which we find ourselves today. There can be no starting from scratch. We can only rewire at this point. We must make holes in the walls, we must pull up the floorboards, for there are numerous flickering lights and shorting sockets that alert us to the need for rewiring democracy. And indeed, numerous fires, both literal and metaphorical. Wildfires in California, a fridge freezer on the fourth floor of the Grenfell Tower block of flats in London, the pile of tires set alight by protesters. Global warming, the rise of populism, and the refugee crisis are the three calls for rewiring that we will be responding to in the next 2 days. And I'm very happy to say that rewiring democracy is an incredibly interdisciplinary undertaking and the most interdisciplinary center conference we've had recently. So we gather together, and I think it's because of the question that we're asking, we gather together as literary scholars, philosophers, sociologists, poets, journalists, as professors and students, as humans marked by anthropological difference, but caught, whatever differs between us, by the same cause. So thank you for being here. I'm very much looking forward to our exchanges. And before I hand over to Jeanne to comment on the second part of the title, a couple of practical notes to bring us right down to earth. The toilets are upstairs if you need them. If you need anything else, please ask me or Jeanne or Guillaume, who's at the back, and we will do our best to help you. We have student workers with us who are out at the moment doing a quick errand, but they will be circulating. Wit and Kristen are their names. And just a small point of detail, they will be passing around a microphone. Please, if you can, avoid the temptation to say, I don't need a microphone, because first of all, for questions of accessibility, not everybody hears as well as everybody else, but also we're recording, right? So please do wait for the microphone. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to now sit down and enjoy listening and learning with you and dialoguing, I hope. So welcome, bon colloque. And if we haven't met, please come up and say hello. And I hand over to Jeanne Etelin.
Thank you so much. So let me extend Françoise and Philippe's warm welcome as well as their thank you to our sponsors for their support. My name is Jeanne Etelin, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a PhD candidate at NYU and one of the co-organizers of the two-day event, Rewiring Democracy. We are delighted to have you today to participate in this conference organized by the NYU Center for French Languages and Culture. We are honored that many of our invited speakers agreed to come from afar to be here today. The fact that they've traveled long distances serves as a reminder to us all just how important the theme of this conference is, the theme being democracy. We've named this event Rewiring Democracy Beyond Us and Them. But what does this phrase mean? To me, it's about the politics of pronouns and the creation of collective subjects and communities that are inclusive of all life forms. As we know, pronouns play a key role in identity formation and political representation. First, they're a way of expressing person, number, and gender. Second, they're referential and deictic, while also standing for someone or something else. As such, pronouns are used to construct notions of self and other. However, the identity and representation work that they accomplish is a version of reality rather than an objective fact. Even to say that I am I is a failure of pronouns, since myself is a collaboration of trillions of microbial cells. More importantly, my actions are not my own. They're never solely determined by my intentions, but depends on a network of interactions involving other humans, as well as material objects, technical artifacts, personal histories, social institutions, and much more. So what prevents me from saying we when talking about me? This complicates, of course, the Hegelian phrase, I that is we and we that is I, which is constitutive of the modern political subjectivity centered around citizenship. Today, we've learned to be wary of universalizing conception of the pronoun we that leaves out, let alone my microbial cells, categories of gender, sexual orientation, socio-economic status, physical or mental ability, racial identity, cultural heritage, religious belief, national citizenship, and other anthropological differences. The rhetoric of us and them, which far-right movements are particularly fond of, risk uttering hate speech. The central question then is who says we, for whom, and from where? In other words, how can we think the universal today, and what a politics of the universal would look like? This question has been bequeathed to us by the social and political movements of the 20th century in their failure to bring about practices of decision-making that involves exploited, alienated, and dominated groups who have little say in the making of society, but who are at the same time its very conditions of possibility. I believe that the challenge today is the lack of a pronoun and ultimately of a politics that can express a multiple and heterogeneous entity made of entangled lives, but with no unified identity and which cannot be represented. So to discuss this challenge, we are honored to welcome leading speakers from France, Europe, and the United States, who work on the concept of democracy at the intersection of several disciplines, especially ecology, history, law, literature, philosophy, political science, and sociology. I'd like to extend a special thank you to our guest of honor, Marielle Massé, who's from afar, and Etienne Balibar, whose insightful work on the history and the political character of the pronoun we have greatly shaped our event. They will respectively deliver each of the 2 morning keynote addresses that will frame each of the 2 days. Aside from panels and keynotes, we also have 3 special events I would like to highlight. First, it would have been impossible to organize a conference on democracy in a university without reflecting on our work as teachers and on democracy within the classroom, as well as challenges and obstacles to it. So this afternoon from 3:45 p.m. to 5:30 p.m., there will be a roundtable on democratic pedagogies gathering undergraduates, PhD students, language instructors, tenured faculty, and administrators. And there's already some quotes that you can read that will frame our conversation this afternoon. Second, there will be a public conversation tonight from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. with Jadeline Gart, journalist for the news site Mediapart, on current social movements in France and their explorations of alternative democratic practices. And so please don't run after the food is served, as it promises to be a very fantastic discussion. Third, there will be a poetry reading tomorrow night from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the New Yorker Poets Café with Philippe Beck, French poet and professor of philosophy, followed with a public conversation on the relation between democracy and poetry. Finally, I would like to personally thank Philippe Usher for embarking me on this amazing adventure. It has been both an enriching and pleasurable experience collaborating with you, and I can't wait for more. This event took many different shapes over the past year, and I look forward to a constructive, engaging, and inspiring exchange of ideas. I also thank Guillaume Parodi for his work and dedication in making this event possible. And there are many other people I would like to thank for their contribution through random suggestions, little help, des coups de main, support, but the list is way too long. So I hope they will recognize themselves. So I could say that behind this event, there's already something like a collective desire, and I think that's something I really, I'm very grateful for. And one last thank you to everyone for being here today. Thank you very much.
I'm Carolyn Dinshaw, Dean for Humanities here at NYU, and I'm delighted to welcome you today to this, what promises to be an amazing conference. The topics addressed couldn't be more urgent, and I'm particularly struck by the emphasis on pronouns. I was in Berlin over the weekend on a quick trip to give a lecture at the Free University. Over dinner, after the lecture, colleagues were discussing the sorry state of national politics. What else are you going to have for dinner conversation? And they were observing how impossible it is for Germans to say we, as in we Germans, despite the signs in the subway plaintively urging Wir sind eins. It's still discomforting. It's still impossible, they lamented, all these years after the war, when new challenges like climate change combine with familiar ones like populism and nativism to fracture emergent unities, and unification has only exacerbated social, political, and economic inequality. Colleagues at that night's dinner maintained that the lost ideal of a unified land hasn't been adequately mourned, because how can you mourn an ideal that ended up requiring the murder of 6 million people? After that grim meal, a couple of nights later, I went to a collectively run cafe. There was a huge Extinction Rebellion banner hanging next to it, and the energy was forward-moving, positive, very determined. And I recalled at that moment what Michael D. Higgins, president of Ireland, said during his recent address at NYU. Don't waste your youth on old and dying paradigms. He was directing his remarks specifically to students, insisting that we need new ideas for democracy. So I wish you a productive conversation in search of refreshing new paradigms. Let's not waste what's left of our youth.